He's Howard Eibach, a former copywriter and creative director and the author of not one, but two books on the creative brief.
And he's Henry Gomez, an ad agency strategist with not 27, not 28, but 29 years of experience in our glorious industry. Together, he and I are the Brief Brothers, and we love talking about creative briefs, briefing, and advertising. Henry, we're back with another episode. We're going to kind of do another nuts and bolts discussion, and we have some amazing fodder thanks to our buddies Pieter-Paul von Weiler and Matt Davies. They are the founders of a company called BetterBriefs.com, and they've done another global survey. This time it's on better ideas, how to get better ideas, how to review ideas, and what the gap of understanding and knowledge is between marketers and creative agencies. And this is a long report, kind of like their first report on briefs, and we're not going to even attempt to go through the whole thing. We've picked out one slide to kind of give us a taste, and I put out a request to our buddies Pieter-Paul and Matt, and I hope we get them on the show again. They're a long ways away. They're in Australia, so a time zone difference. But let me just show you. This is slide 10. And by the way, you can go to betterbriefs.com, their website, and download this report yourself. It's open and free to the public. So here's just one slide, which you and I decided was great fodder for a discussion. Okay, you can see down here at the bottom, this is Better Ideas Project, their global report. And the statement that they put to both marketers and creatives or agencies was evaluating ideas is hard. And you can see that 64% of marketers agree with this, but a whopping 71% of agency folks agree with this. So in other words, when you're sitting in the room after the creatives have been briefed and the work comes back and we've decided what are we going to take to the client, now we're trying to sell the work to the client. And this piece of information is really not talked about very much, is it, Henry? Let's kind of get a discussion going on here about the tricky responsibility, but important responsibility of accepting getting these ideas is hard, and then evaluating them is hard as well. What are your thoughts as a strategist?
So when I saw this, one, I wasn't surprised. But it is shocking because evaluating ideas does not have to be hard. To me, this is one of the fundamental issues in the relationship between agencies and clients. And here where it says marketers, they clarify in the beginning of the document what they refer to as marketers, and it's basically clients.
Right.
And then they have the agencies. And the problem is, who's buying this work? The clients are buying the work. So that means the clients should very clearly articulate the criteria by which they are going to evaluate the work that they buy. If there's confusion about how to evaluate ideas, it's because that first job was never done. The agency maybe didn't press the client hard enough to ask them what their criteria was.
Yeah, we have to acknowledge that. That's a really good point.
Absolutely. I mean, the agency should, when you first sign up with a client, there should be that conversation about what are we trying to do? How are we going to how are you going to evaluate the ideas that we bring to you? Understanding that, creativity itself is subjective, but ideas that I'm presenting for your brand, there should be certain things that are not subjective. So what are the parameters that the brand has set forth in order to say, this is how we're going to evaluate ideas? And when you see a brand that is firing on all cylinders and their advertising campaigns are incredibly consistent and incredibly good, it's because whether through overt communication or by happenstance, things were defined in a very clear way. This is what works for us. This is anything else isn't going to work for us. And so I think the idea is that you need to have those parameters. And so we were talking off air before we started, and to me, the best example of a marketer that knew what they wanted and knew how to evaluate it and approved ideas that fell within those parameters and didn't approve ideas that didn't fall within those parameters was Burger King during the time of Fernando Machado as their CMO. Now, I say that because I've worked with a lot of Fortune 500 clients. You know, big brands. I've worked McDonald's, Royal Caribbean Cruise Line, CVS Pharmacy, Dunkin' Donuts, Ford Motor Company, Subway. Machado had a way of articulating exactly what he expected from ideas for Burger King, not just his personal criteria, but what the brand stands for, how we look at ideas, what our strategy is in terms of our advertising strategy. And I don't want to get too deep. This isn't about Burger King, but I remember when I was writing a brief for my team because we wanted to pitch ideas to Burger King, I found a video where he was doing an interview with an Indian TV station at Cannes, and he sat down with them and talked to them for more than an hour. And he basically talked to this is our brand strategy. These are the because they were talking about the subject was creativity at Cannes and the wonderful run of success that Burger King was having at Cannes, and he was basically saying, "Well, this is what we're looking for." And he said, "I'm looking for ideas that have talkability, which meant that they could have virality, right? That people would share them to multiply the media effect of the whatever media budget Burger King had that paled in comparison to McDonald's." He says, "We don't have that, so we need to have ideas that people are going to pass along for free." So talkability was a big thing. The tone was another big thing that was clearly defined, and he clearly defined it in an interview that went out to the world. So I can only imagine that internally in the marketing department and to the agencies, he was even more clear and explicit. So I think really being once you have those parameters, then this becomes easy. This is like, does this idea fit within what the brand is trying to do? Does this idea fit within the tone of the brand? Is this part? Does this add to the strategy that we're doing? In the Burger King case, it was talkability. Does this idea have talkability or not? Is this just something people are going to scroll by and not care about? So I think the next slide there's some quotes, and I think it would be great to if you could advance it one, because the interesting thing about this deck, and I really love this deck, and again urge everyone to download it, is they ran the survey, and then after they ran the survey, they showed the data to some thought leaders in the industry who reacted to it and gave quotes. Um, and I think it's important.
Many of them were quite shocked by the results. But like
Yeah,
you said, shocked but not surprised.
yes. And I really gravitated toward the one on the far right here from Richard Huntington, Chief Strategy Officer of Saatchi and Saatchi. Evaluating ideas is hard. They are such intangible and delicate things, especially when they first see the light of day. It's important that we recognize how difficult it is and that this sense is shared openly between clients and agencies. Absolutely 100% agree. What makes it hard is shooting an idea into a vacuum that has no parameters.
Absolutely.
That's that's
Absolutely.
that's the killer because what am I evaluating this crazy idea the agency brought to me based on?
Well, one of the things that, and again, we don't want to, I want to get Pieter-Paul and Matt in here to talk about this from their perspective and what they learned from this. But we can hint at some of the other things, the conclusions that they drew. It was surprising to me how few agencies and clients use the creative brief as a measuring stick, which is a way of eliminating that vacuum. Another one was how how
But
often,
if you if you go back even one step before the brief, right? The brief writer supposedly is writing the brief based on information and parameters given to him by the or her by the client,
right?
right? So I agree with you. The brief is where you come back and you're evaluating the creative and you measure it against the brief. But that brief is only a good parameter if it's an accurate reflection of the things that I've just been talking about. Like the what are we trying to do as a brand? What
Well,
is our
now,
tone? What
yeah, remember the first study that Pieter-Paul and Matt did, 3, 4 years ago, and we had them come on to talk about it, which was evaluating briefs from the clients to the agencies. And one of the astounding results that you and I were still, shake our heads over, 60% of marketers admitted that they used the creative process to finalize and figure out the strategy.
and that I think is ultimately where it's broken
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you're going into a process where ideally this you're using the strategy to evaluate the ideas, but they're saying that they're evaluate as they're evaluating ideas, they're considering strategy and
They're
which
they're
direction to,
clarifying it. Yeah, it's like what? Well, I'm not quite sure about my strategy, but maybe this idea is going to wait. It's
and
putting the cart in front of the horse.
I think that that speaks to a deeper issue of developing campaigns as one-offs as opposed to vehicles to achieve a desired strategy.
Yes, yes. Another thing that the Peter, Paul, and Matt allude to in this survey results was the danger of using the concept of "I like this," my
Oh,
opinion, to evaluate creative, because that again speaks to exactly what you're saying. There's no criteria. It's a vacuum. They're not using the brief. They're simply using the
and you're not
reaction. We're not.
and you're not using the target audience's potential reaction. Like you as a 50-year-old CMO may have a very different criteria than your Gen Z customer base, you know.
And I don't care. I don't care how many pairs of shoes of the product that you make you have in your closet at home. That doesn't make you the customer. So you
Correct.
don't know what they're thinking. So yeah, again, we don't want to give away the
The
we don't want
store.
to steal the thunder here from what Peter, Paul, and Matt have done, which is an astounding piece of research and shared with the world. We want to get them to come on and talk about this. But this plays into the stuff that you and I have been talking about for 4 years. It's what I face every time I go into a creative brief writing workshop. Um, and it's like I agree with you 100%. It doesn't have to be hard. There are ways to make this easy.
This business is hard enough. You know, coming up with a creative idea is hard enough. Figuring out how we're going to evaluate it and agreeing to it shouldn't be that hard.
Oh, 100%. Well, I think it's a great episode, Henry. This is really good stuff.
Good stuff, Howard.
He he's Henry Gomez.
And he's Howard Eibach.
And together we're the Brief Brothers. Till next time. Bye bye.